Hello, everyone. Welcome to this next instalment of Under the Microscope. Today, we're going to be looking at in possession with the focus on create the attack. My name is Ben Futcher, and I'm a youth coach developing the professional game. And I'm delighted to be joined by Paul McGuinness.
Hi, Ben.
I'm just going to run through some of the session aims that we're going to looking to get out of today's workshop. So we're going to be looking at how we apply the Quadrant tool on some matchday observations. We're going to recap some of the key factors when using Under the Microscope that we've looked at in the previous workshops. But now we're really going to be moving forward and looking how are we using these key factors to frame up our session designing practices. So how are we making a model throughout these workshops, and how are we implementing this with our players? And we're going to be observing connections between players on, around, and away from the ball. So we've looked at the importance of the microscope of the player on the ball. But now we're just going to be expanding it as well to the importance, especially around create the attack, of what it looks like away from the ball and the connections between the players. Okay, Paul, I'll hand over to you for this next slide.
Yeah, well, of course, what are the challenges the game presents in when we've got possession and we're trying to create the attack? And wherever we are in the pitch, here is probably the middle part of the pitch. The opposition will have a compact defence. They'll be trying to stop you going through them, over or around them. They may be pressing or they may be dropping off, but they'll be trying to stop you having passing lines. They might have individual pressure on the ball at certain times. They may try to force you one way. So there's plenty of challenges within there. The challenge really then is to loosen up that compact defence. How do you create movement? How do you create width and depth to stretch that defence and create passing lines through, over, or around? And we'll be looking at that, through these clips and trying to look for the key factors involved.
Yeah, I think it's important for the coaches watching. What are some of the challenges they face in their environment with their players in create the attack? I think that's important. They might not make some notes if you're watching on some of the things Paul's going to talk about and how you can kind of deal with these problems. So we're going to move on to look at an England DNA slide now and try to unpick some of the detail and what this can look like.
Yeah, I think this is a really nice slide. And here they're attacking from the opposite end in this sense. So coming towards you, and you can see there they've got the five lanes, as they call it, the width. And can they have players wide who are stretching the play to try and loosen that defence? There'll be players inside, so they've got people in each lane and trying to find pockets of space. There may be rotation. There will be a switching of play and the play around to go round and search for gaps. And then there may be runs beyond. So it's a nice graphic to have a good look at, creating, as they say, dominance and control, maybe control and patience, searching for that right moment to go through, over, or around. Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff, Paul, it's determined by the context of the game, isn't it? And the players we've got kind of within our group on what we can and can't do with them.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on your strengths or weaknesses. Do you have a quick centre forward, or is he a target man that you play up to first and then have runners off? What type of defenders do you have? Midfield players. Very much then the strengths and weaknesses that you're trying to connect players and understand that, but also understand the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition and maybe their style. Are they going to be pressing you high here, or are they going to drop off and wait for mistakes and set traps? So yeah, there's lots to think about in terms of the context of the game. It may be you're ahead in the game, and you can then be patient and move the opposition around more, go back, rotate and move the ball from side to side to pull them and entice them out of position. Or it might be you want to be more direct towards the end of the game. So the context, yeah, is important. What's happening at that stage in the game.
Brilliant. Okay, Paul. This is some of the considerations you've put together around on and around and away from the ball for players, the individual player, and for the coaches maybe to look at, and things they might be looking for. And you've kind of put it in some sort of order for them.
Yeah, I think so. I think the first thing to say is that I've moved the direction slightly different here. So I'm looking at the play here on the left at the Blacks with we're the attacking team in this sense. I always like to have that so that I can see my team. I've got my right back on the right, the left back on the left. I can see the shape of my team, and it's easier then to maybe refer to. So in this case, the left back has the ball, but there is, say, a big width in the game and a depth, so that you can stretch the opposition and then have positional play inside and movement of the players inside that shape, so that you may well stretch them, but then in possession you come out of position and are moving to disrupt the compact block of the opposition. So in that sense, both individually, width and depth and positional play is important, and then there might be changes of speed individually. Does the left back here, does they drag it to the outside, then dodge back inside with a change of speed and rhythm and direction, and just have deception as if you're going to play it maybe inside to the right back, to the midfield player, and then maybe play it over the top for the winger going. So there might be deception involved, but there might be deception and enticing and committing as a team as well, and changes of direction. So switching the play quickly as a team, not just as an individual, and enticing a team on. So you might play back to entice them to press you, to leave a gap to play forward. Or in this case, the midfield player might be dropping deeper to entice his opponent out of position. So I think those would all be key elements in both the team and individual key factors. I
think these key factors, Paul, they're all interlinked, aren't they? So they can they overlap. So we talk about a change of speed and rhythm and deception. That's often linked together with players, isn't it?
Yeah, very much. You might entice the team together to the left, short passes, bring them all over, bring a lot of their players over, and then with a change of speed and direction, you change the play over to the other side. Just as, say, a winger may slowly drag the ball with the inside of the foot inside and then burst outside, then there's still changes of direction, speed, and maybe a bit of deception thrown in at the same time. But these would be key factors you're looking for.
Brilliant. So as this builds on now, Paul, you're going to talk us through each kind of factor now in some detail, aren't you? And really kind of explain kind of how that looks from the different positions and the different areas of the pitch.
Yeah, I think definitely from an individual point of view, as they're growing up, kids, they will use that idea of the quadrant. Where can I get space away from my marker? And that the idea of creating space, it might be a run forward to then check back into that space. And he's created space for the pass to come away from his marker. Also knowing that the marker might not really want to leave that space and start, where there's a passing line there to the centre forward. So one way is creating space for yourself. And I think once the players got that concept of how to create space for themselves, then the next stage is how do they understand about enticing someone out of a passing line, which would be the next one, the next point, I think. Yeah, so they've created space there and enticing to create a passing line. So here the defender, the midfield player has been drawn towards them in that part of the quadrant, leaving a passing line open, the space open. So quite often a midfield player will come off on an angle short to try and get the ball, but also to entice their opponent. They might entice the opponent towards them, receive the pass, then lay it back to the full back who's got the space to run into. And it's a case of understanding that so that they know that as a tactic. They're drawing the other players out of a passing line and out of their compact shape. Yeah.
And that's really important, Paul, isn't it? Because if you're receiving it, you might drop off to try and create space for yourself and receive. And it depends on the opposition. One opponent, you might drop off you, so you've got space to receive it. Another opponent might come tight when you open up that passing lane.
Exactly, and that's where the other parts of the skills come. It's not just then the positional play and the movement, it's scanning over your shoulder to see the reaction of your opponent, to see what spaces have been created. Sure, if he doesn't come with you now, you might get it to your feet and play it yourself because you've got space. If he quickly closes that space down, then you might lay it off for the fullback to play through the space that's been left. Yeah. Next one here. Is a case here. It might be some movement. So here, if you are being marked tightly and you understand that the responsibilities of the defender, then he might run him out of that space to create a space for someone else. So you see now he's run out into the far side of that circle into the space and left the space for the defensive midfield player to come into. And with particularly with young players, these are sort of three concepts that quickly can follow on from each other. So if you understand creating space for yourself, or enticing someone out of that passing line, then the next step is quite easy. You look around and think, well, how can I run out of here and create a space for a teammate? And then in that sense, this is another version of it. The centre forward is enticing the defender forward. So there's definitely that enticement to come forward, and then that has created the space here and the run. So that's created space for a teammate, which then with the right timing allows then him to run off his defender, maybe blind side, to run into that space. So that's the old adage of space created, pass delivered, man arrives now. So it's the time in the sequence to allow that penetration to occur.
It's a bit like, Paul, isn't it? These key components we're talking about now, these are almost create the attack focused, whereas the key factors are still vital. The individual key factors we've spoke about throughout the kind of previous workshops, and we're going to come on to a bit later on, they're key for the individual and they're still vital to this. But these ones we're talking about now, these are very specific to the create the attack area, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think they happen in tighter areas around the box as well, where someone may, create space where a forward might run to the near post but leave space at the back for someone else. So I think there are also general principles that you're looking for. But these particular movements, they're patterns that will become, regular, that people will recognize and players want to recognize. And again, that again comes down to session design. If you want these type of patterns to come out, then you have to create enough space for them to be able to happen. And the key thing here, and within all of this, is the idea is that we're searching constantly here to play that forward pass. I think in lots of ways, if you look at this diagram, the back four, they're the deepest ring, the play around ring. So you would play the ball around here until you get the chance to play it maybe forward. You're looking for the furthest forward pass, but it may go into the midfield player. Now it's gone into the midfield, and you see there's a ring there with the outside left, the left winger, the guy on the ball, another midfield player on the right wing. That might be a play around ring to then look for those runs, and that's the sort of run you've ended up getting here as you recognise the striker drops off, entices the defender out of the space, and then he runs blind side. But the fact that you've got the two wide players in the space has also sort of fixed and pinned the fullbacks into position and created a space there that I think we see later in some of the clips that we show. And that leads to the timing and penetration,
It's like we spoke about earlier, how we're using all these key factors now to frame up the session design, isn't it? I mean, are we allowing this underpinning detail to come out with our players on the training ground? So I think for coaches watching, it's important now we start thinking, how do we design sessions that allows this sort of detail to come out? What we're going after as a coach, what the underpinning detail we want from our model, our players to learn, and do our sessions allow it to come out on a regular basis in a realistic environment, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the whole process. It's not just observational tool. It's to get the key factors in place, a vision of good football, of parts of good football like that, a forward dropping off and the midfield player running past them. That would be a key sort of vision for the coach to try and get out. Yeah. Good.
Okay, so now we're going to have a look at this slide here, and we're going to start looking at the considerations around what skills and attributes we want our players to have in order to overcome the challenges that the game presents. So for me, it's really important to consider the players we've got at our disposal and what the characteristics that they've got. I know you've spoken about the previous workshops, Paul, about the strengths and the weaknesses compared to their opponent. So and you've got to link that as a coach to how do you want to play the game? So how do you want to play with the players you've got, and what sort of problems do the opposition present us? So do you want to go into a bit more on that, Paul?
Yeah, I think at this point we're really sort of trying to build up this idea, the vision of the game, and each of these clips I think that we'll show again will be just dropping in key ideas, key factors that drop into each of the headings in our model. It's like having a filing cabinet, really. And if we go back to it here, Again, we're talking about the context. Yeah, what's the strengths and weaknesses of your players, the opposition, the type of game, what's their system, all those sort of things. But then we're looking particularly again at, what's the position they take up? That positional play there, the players playing wide, pinning their fullbacks, open up spaces for then the movement inside. And in the diagram, the movement, the positional play, the craft is to start with a structure, but then to move positions while you're in attack to disrupt the opposition. So just there with the circle around it, and the quadrant, the midfield players come deep. They say he's really enticing, or saying to the defender, what do you want to do? Do you want to come tight to me? That might leave a gap. Are you going to stay there? So that cunning, clever positional play, enticing, and coming off your man on an angle, looking over your shoulder, that would be a key factor. Right, position, bang, that goes in my filing cabinet. That's registered as my coach. And as he's doing that, he's scanning. The midfield players, the fullback's already scanning for the highest pass, and he's scanning for that movement. I'll leave anticipation, communication at the moment, but then movement. So how quick does he come off? Does he come off sideways? Does he come off on an angle? And then is there deception? Maybe he's run away first and then checked off. So he's having a little look. And in that run before, where the midfield player eventually runs through, is he running blindside? So the deception comes into it. There might be deception on the fullback's pass. So what we're trying to do is slowly build all these things up and use this as a mental model, like a filing cabinet in our head, to run through it. What's the timing? Does he come off early, or does he wait to the last second as the ball's just arriving with the fullback and then drop off? And then what techniques is the fullback using? Is he looking as though he's going down the line and disguising the pass? Is it inside of the foot pass? Is the pass playable? What's his first touch like? And then within this sort of, I know we've added in now anticipation, because that's important, but that's dependent on looking at people's position, scanning, what's their movement, to help you anticipate what they might do. It might be the context of, we'll anticipate that the defender likes to come tight. All those things are important. And then the communication, of course, it might be verbal communication, but most of this is through your scanning, picking up the body movement of the players. So communication would be that midfield player maybe just coming off quickly, and that would be enough communication at the right time for the pass. Communication of a forward that he's blindside, and then all of a sudden he makes a darting run forward or back. All those things. So I think communication is within all of it. And what we're really trying to do is, like we say, we're trying to get a file in our head for the coaches of all these key parts of the game that then can help them observe their own players and design their own practices.
It's like the 1v1 tactics, Paul. Now, as we're talking around create the attack, there's almost so much that going on all over the pitch. So I'm thinking, what you talk about communication, a central midfielder, there's no time in a game for him to play that killer pass if there's any communication. The communication is almost seeing someone out the corner of your eye, but the communication from the striker is almost the kind of the tempo of his run, the speed of his run. So he might come short. So the midfielder's catching something out the corner of his eye, and the communication there for me is the speed and the movement he's making. He's telling the man on the ball, I need the ball there now. But that's happening in a second.
Yeah, that's the body language. So, of course, there will have been communication maybe before games and in training. That's what the training's for, to set up these instinctive signals and communication. As soon as his body language changed, now you know. And of course, that's part of the deception. If he moves too soon, he runs too soon down that channel or what have you, then the defender's going to be able to read it. It's that last second. But that's the connection. And I think we'll see that within these clips, that the connections between the players and these small movements are vital. And of course, these are the small movements. You've got to coach them. This takes coaching. It doesn't just happen now automatically. This is where the whole reason of looking so finely and focused under the microscope is so that, we've got this timing and we've got these small movements that communicate it. Definitely. And I think you'll definitely see from these clips that it happens.
Yeah.
Good. And then, just to revise that again, to really focus, looking at the range frequency of scanning skills, yeah, they're vital. If they're not looking, then you know it's not on. And here a key thing where we're trying to play maybe balls behind the defense. One of my big things I'm finding watching a lot of games and academy games where it is quite tight, people tend to then just play the ball around, but they've got to be searching all the time before the ball comes. What's their intention? Their intention has to be to hit the most hurtful pass. It may not always be on, but if they're looking for it, that will guide how they receive the ball, the position they get their body into, and it also guides the connection with the forwards making the runs. So yeah, the intention, the actual before they go, to have that ingrained, they're looking for that most hurtful pass is one of the most important things to observe here.
It's like one of your key factors as a coach, Paul, isn't it? Is play forward, but then your central midfielder, for example, he needs to be receiving the ball with his body in a position he can play forward. So you've got to link your key factors, but then what's the underpinning detail behind that on how a player can play forward? So you might have a key factor, but is your session design enable him to kind of practice what you want? And are you coaching him to do what you want?
Exactly, and that spreads to the whole team, because it might well be, as in the clip before, that the midfield players coming short, and it entices their midfield player there, and that leaves the pass on for the defender, and they're going to hit the forward either to feet behind the most hurtful pass. I think that's vital right at the start. He's very clear in these clips that you want to be looking, to hurt the opposition from this area of the field. Yeah. Good. So I think we've got a number of clips we're going to load up now that really, I think, demonstrate what we're talking about. While I think for everybody looking, the coach is to, under those sort of headings that you've got in that model we've got, put something down, make your notes under context, under scanning, under anticipation, movement, deception, timing, communication, techniques. Just slowly slot in. Yeah, these are the key factors that make this connection. And just before we start these clips, I'm sort of trying to use the analogy here of, to get a flow either through or around or over their defense, in order to get through them, you probably have to play quicker than the opposition a lot of the time. Sometimes it'll be slow and a change of speed, but it quite often needs a flow to get through them. And that means each connection between the players has to be really good. For me, it's almost like an electric circuit going off. So each connection is a light bulb. Yeah, we got that idea, bang. Yeah, I've got that idea. I've got that key factor, bang. And then for a coach, then when it breaks down, you see when maybe that idea, that connection wasn't made. It wasn't as strong, or it was a misconnection. And I think you'll see the flow in some of the clips here is because each part that each player has is connected, and they get it exactly right, the connection. So if we just play this one, have a look at it first through, coming over here for each connection, each touch. Now here, if we say the first connection here is the fact that from the right back, I think it's Williams, he plays this ball over at the perfect pace. It's the right weight. I call it smoothing it out, but you'd leave the pass playable, which allows Van Dijk to take his first touch and get it to the best place. There's his first touch to the best place. So there's that extra connection, the light bulb going on. Now he plays the pass exactly the right weight, which allows him to look up. The receiver there, Robertson, looks up and he can take the ball off the line and get it to the best place with his first touch. If it was coming too quick, he wouldn't be able to do that. Now we've created 3 players in a line, which is a concept also that allows for Milner to run out of the space and create the right passing line. Here, he's created that space by his enticing the guy out of position. The pass is left playable, which means it's smooth and he can look over his shoulder, Firmino. The third man comes in the line, Wijnaldum. He has to punch this through because it's a small gap. And here it's now, because it's come quick, now with the red highlight, it's a bit of a breakdown in the connection. He takes an extra touch, it's under his feet, And these two runners, Wijnaldum going across, doesn't quite get across in time. And it would have left a space, as you see, behind for the third man run from Firmino. So if we just look at that, if we draw that back again, I think, and we have a look here again and just look through it, we can see each bit as it comes through. There's the smooth pass. That allows the perfect first touch. He's already had a look, know where his man is. And this is the right weight.
I think when you start looking at this now, Paul, you start looking away from the ball. If you look at like Salah and Mane, who are wide, the impact they're having, even though they're not actually part of the actual play, as we'll say, they're kind of affecting the Arsenal fullbacks because they're high and wide. The threat they're kind of offering is stretching that back four or back five for Arsenal right across, and it's creating that space in the middle of the pitch. So even though they're not directly involved in the passing, the impact they're having from their positional discipline is key, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we see it again in a minute here. When it gets to about this point, if I've paused it there, yeah, you can see Mane here right on the bottom left-hand side. He's fixed Holden, who's had to come out to him on the far right-hand side. That stretched their whole team out, which then means that the movement in the middle is creating gaps in between here, in between the fullback and the centre half, and that's creating a lot of space that can be exploited by the movement of the players. And again, there's some real key points here. Let's see, we're back here. So here now, look, the passing line would be stopped, but he takes it inside. So getting your touch to the best place would go in the technical little sort of filing cabinet, wouldn't it? Would be vital. And again, he leaves this playable in a minute. He takes it across in front. And the run across by Milner is enticing the defender out of the space. That takes the pass inside, creates that passing line. The three in the line, him running out the line, leaves the space to Firmino. Firmino has a look as it comes on now. As it comes on here, you see Firmino, because it's a playable pass, it's not bouncing or bobbling. It allows him to have a look. And also his disguise. It looks like he's going to take the ball, but it's small, very small late movements. You just let the ball run, which is brilliant. This has to be punched. And then he carries on his run, Wijnaldum. But because the touch is a little bit off here, because it's a firm pass, that slows him down. He sort of slows down and doesn't clear the defender out of the space. But look there at Firmino. He's on the blind side of the player and, would maybe have got into that space behind. But there you see all the connections, just that small little connection of maybe the first touch from Milner, because it was a really firm pass, meant that broke the connection a little bit. But you can see all the tiny pieces that again would be coaching. And again, what would you do there? That picture a second ago, with when it gets to here, that pass there. That moment, that with two defenders in and there, that might be a rondo with four players in, four players around the outside, two in the middle. He has to hit it firm. That might be part of your session design, so that there's firm passes having to go through to practice that touch as well. When you're thinking about your session design here, if you didn't have a pitch that was full width, you wouldn't be able to create the spaces. You wouldn't have Mane and Firmino pulling the players wide to create that space. So the width and the depth of your pitch in session design would be vital as well. But also the key thing is that intention to pass forward, really putting that in the players' minds would be at the forefront of your session design. Yeah. Okay, next clip sort of loaded up again. Similar ideas. We'll run it through once here and have a look through. So again, if he's a pass playable, it's ahead in that quadrant for the fullback, and now you see the movement of Mane and Firmino running off him. So again, here he plays ahead of him. This allows him to look up. Now on the right-hand side, you see Mane's position running behind and then checking back. So you could put a quadrant behind that. He's run to the blind side of the defender. He looks at the defender, which means he knows where the defender's coming, and against the flow runs back. Now you see Firmino, he's blind side of his man. He looks at his head, so he knows he can run behind him. Again, it's the first touch to the right place for Mane and Plus in front, so there's a flow, and he bursts onto it. And even this little movement here makes the defender turn the opposite way and creates the space for the shot.
I'll link this back to practice design, Paul. And if we're not running practices with that space behind, then and defenders haven't got that threat of having to defend that space behind, then Mane is not able to do that kind of check to go away to come short in the space. He can't create the space for himself if we're not designing practices where defenders feel there is space behind them where they've got to cover it. Then if they always know they can come tight, is that realistic to the game? Well, it's not. So we need to start looking at practices where they're realistic to the game. And in that situation, the defender, Rob Holding, he's worried he's going to get spun down the side. So he covers that space. As soon as he looks at the ball and he's covering the space, Mane looks at his eyes, checks short, gets the ball. So it's if we're designing practices, can we create the picture as it happens? Because in create the attack, you need to create space in that middle third of the pitch. And in order to do that, it's that sort of movement away from the ball that creates the space to be able to enable players to play short.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the connection between players. Obviously, that pass allows, because it's left playable, he knows it's coming. He can look. He's already having a look forward now. His intentions to play forward. He's checking for Mane's position. And Mane now is ready to make that move. He's blindside of his man. He's running behind. But he knows also he can see the defender. So the defender looks like he's checking it off. Now look at the lines of force. If we were to put that cylinder around it, like we've done in previous courses, big high cylinder, and think, well, what's the lines of the force? The defender's line is running one way. Mane is now checking back his lines of force to go the next, to check back. I've just got to play that. There, he starts to check back. There, and because he can see the defender as well, he's got that advantage. The defender can't see him until now. Now he's created the space for himself, and he's ready. He knows where he's got time to have a look because this pass is playable. And now you've got Firmino, he's blindside of his man. Now the pass comes in front of him. There's a change of pace. He's having a look up, and just this little body movement takes it to the other side of the defender to play in. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, see it run through again. And that's the connection between the three players. Yeah. So there's a light bulb for me going on in each case, which means there's a flow to each player in that circuit of players. Yeah. Yeah. And this one is similar, but now because he's come short, he's able to also now in that cat and mouse duel, this is the context. What are the recent patterns? He's come short once. Now he may be able to go in behind. And it's, again, clear pictures that are coming. I think in this clip, you'll see, again, it's smooth passing out, left playable to Robertson. But look here as well at the position of Milner. He's going out and then he comes in, which entices the wing back in and leaves the space for this pass. And this is the best view of it, of course, here. At this point, the defender's looking. He's got an idea of the picture. Milner has brought his man inside, which has left a channel down the side to play the pass. They're looking for eye contact, that connection between them. If you look at the lines of force, the defender is more square on, whereas Mane is not giving any clues yet, but he's just about to hit that gun. The gun is about to go off on the start for the race, and his lines of force are then ready to go forward and burst into the space. So it's that timing, bang, off he goes, and now he runs across the line of the defender, slows down a little bit to block his line, so he's using his body as a barrier, gets in front of his run, so he's able to do it. The ball's just bobbling a little bit. He goes back across him again, as it's bobbling, it means he can't quite get his foot underneath it to maybe play it over the goalkeeper. But again, a lot of interconnections. You know, the first pass out to Robertson allows him to look up. It's the preparation of the position by Milner to entice his man in. Mane prepares the space, and then it's the timing to get off the mark. Block is run across. So all of those are little things going in my mental model. You know, as a coach for bang, he's prepared his space. What's his footwork like? What's his body position like? He's going against the flow, the timing at the last second. It's deception, really, isn't it? You can't tell from his body language he's going to go, and then all of a sudden he's gone.
I saying, if we want our players to be able to make these sort of runs, Paul, and we talk about session design, as coaches, we might have to manipulate the space we've got. So if we've only got half a pitch, do we always have to split the pitch in half? I mean, we look where Robertson's playing that ball from. Could we split the pitch almost down the middle so you've got a full pitch, but half the pitch lengthways?
Yeah.
So you practice these sort of runs and these sort of passes rather than always just splitting up half a pitch. Can we split the pitch up in different ways? So instead of always working how we work, we're actually got the space to be able to practice this run and practice these passes, because people might say that's a long ball, but for me, that's a fantastic movement by Mane, and the deception and speed getting behind, but that's a pass by Robertson down the side. So whether you have 10 passes, maybe like we saw with Liverpool in the previous clip, or you can do that in one pass, they can still both be just as effective. It's recognizing where the space is and kind of, I know we're talking about penetration and playing forward. If you can do it in one, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, very much so. And yeah, your session design is vital. To give them enough space is very important. Yeah. This clip now from Arsenal ladies against Reading. Again, interesting clip, creating space for yourself and a passing line, and getting a connection with a forward player. So again, we see, there's a chance for eye contact here, looking forward. The wide players again stretching the play on both sides. And now it's can we get the ball here? And now we're looking in the duel with the opponents. Yeah, creating that little bit of space to receive it, but then straight away, because the pass is played, we'll be able to play the ball and come across. And now, getting the head up to have a look. There's the next connection. It's a clear that's a Quadrant to play behind, but also she has to, in her individual duel, create the space to create that passing line in behind. So that's the individual duel on the ball, and then looking at the individual duel off the ball, and the key factors involved. So again, if we go back here.
I think when we talk about movement, Paul, I think sometimes the beauty in it is, if we look here, there isn't actually that much movement. Sometimes if you recognise you're standing still, can almost be, when everyone's moving around you, can be just as effective, can't it?
Yeah, and I think the movement here that beats it is the movement on the ball against the flow. As the defender comes in to challenge, she moves the ball across into that next part of the new sort of quadrant away from her, sort of into that space away. Now it's an opposite movement, and she's caught her off balance. She's going against the flow, and that creates that passing line. And then now it's the technique to reverse the pass. So this is a great pass with reverse technique, with a little bit of disguise to get through. And of course, then you've got the extra bit of the work off the ball, the player off the ball. Talk through that, Futch, when it comes through now, say from this position.
I think as you can see, the wide player is just pulling wide, just is giving herself that distance from the fullback. Then once, as you said, the player on the ball, she wrong foots and opens that passing lane. I think you can see she sets off. She sees the space. She recognises it. And I think her run, she's pointing. We talked about communication earlier on. She's probably not saying anything verbally, but the communication of pointing forward and she's absolutely sprinting is telling the player on the ball. That's
the lines of force there, yeah.
Yeah.
The lines of force of the winger is all going that way. The balance is all in her favour, with the fullback really caught a bit square. So it's like, again, she's able to look at the defender's head. The defender's looking at the ball. She's caught a blind side, hasn't she? So there's all those factors coming into it. But again, the key bit then was they both recognised the timing at the same time, didn't they? Yeah, and this again is a really nice clip for thinking about all the connections and the flow. If the flow isn't right here, if each connection from each player to each other isn't right, and they are really a series of these key factors or concepts. So if you look at the start of this clip, when he comes off Kovacic, I think it is, he must look 2 or 3 times over his shoulder, looks to the right, looks to the left, look again. So he's then able to receive. Each pass is left smooth and playable as it goes along. There's one where it gets flicked up in the air, which Giroud deals with. But to allow the connections and the quick movement, the pass is left playable. The first touch is in the right place. But there's scanning as well that helps connect all the players and gives clear body signals. So have a look at this. Again, 1, 2, 3 looks. First touch to the right place, smooth pass. Again, that one's maybe flicked up, but look at this touch to get it down again here, how quick they get it down. In between the lines, first touch, sets up the pass. And then, everything lights up to get a goal. So here, first touch, looking up, eye contact. Now, if you're saying he's using his body as a barrier down the line from the ball, so the defender has no chance to get to it. He's in the way. He's blocking that. This is a bit flicked up, but now it's a run forward. And now the defender thinks, I must get back. That's one of the centre-backs. He goes back into his position. But here, Pulisic just waits behind the midfield. And now a smooth pass means he's already had a look. He's able to receive now. The smooth leave the pass playable is the big key factor, and that allows him to take his first touch, get it to the best place. His second touch gets it across his man again, like we saw from Mane. That means the defender either has to foul him or he's across in front. Mount has opened up the space. He carries on the flow. They're all flowing forward. This little touch here is brilliant, and this one to just keep the flow going, and a brilliant little chip at the end. But all of it's a flow. I can see all these light bulbs going off in my head, So the position now, first touch, now he's looking, that little look before. Now you've got Mount. He's really deceptive because he's in here, but as soon as that opens up, then that pass, now he sprints to open up the space. So there's 2 tempos to it. There's a searching tempo and then the attacking tempo. Now it allows the passes playable, allows him to play his cross first touch. Now you've got Giroud coming across his man. And again, he's had a glance, so he knows where he is. And this first touch deceives the defender and plays it over. Just pause it there a little bit, just to remind myself. I forgot to mention it before. A lot of the time in creating the attack and in trying to get a forward pass, it's not just a case of hitting any ball forward. You have to search for the right moment. And I was lucky. I was at a conference and Xavi Alonso was talking there, and he talked about how in Spain they have 2 tempos. So the tempo to search, to play around, and then the tempo now is the attack. And I think in this clip you see this very clearly. There's a searching, and then the speed now as it comes through, there's a change. He slides this pass through to Pulisic, who's had a little glance there. You can see he's looking already, he knows where Mount is. And Mount's got that connection with him. If that ball comes through, that's the speeding up process. It's already going quick, but it speeds up again. And you see it here, comes through. There's the smooth pass. Here's the massive change again in tempo. Look at it. They're off. They're all sprinting. These are the predators ready to kill, ready to score the goal. And look at the flow.
That ball speed, Paul, that's almost a sign for the players, right? This is when we're going to penetrate. This is it. So they've built, it's been a bit slower. Then that one pass with the ball speed picks up. It almost picks the whole tempo up. And as from that clip, the players then almost explode into action. The touch is good.
Yeah.
and they're all sprinting forward, and they've got that flow and the force on Arsenal really, and it just kind of, they're all moving forward, and that's their sign, isn't it, to really kind of pick up the tempo of the whole attack.
Yeah, and a key point here as well is, if we go back, is that Pulisic, because he's just behind the midfield. We'll go back again here. Where is he? Because he stops here. If he'd have carried on a little bit more, he could have been he could have been 5 yards further up. We'll go here. So there. If he'd have gone 5 yards further up, he wouldn't have the space and the time to turn necessarily. And now he's got time to speed it up. He can run with the ball here, just off the back of their midfield. So he's positioned just off the back of their midfield, gives him space. And because he can get that space, that's the trigger. The space with the guy with his head up means everybody else sprints. You know, that's the trigger for the forwards, that he's got space, he's got his head up. Now we're sprinting. Now we're going. Yeah, so a really clever clip.
It's the two strikers, I think it's Mount and Giroud, that kind of, they're threatening the back three. And because there is space behind and they're threatening it, they're almost kind of off to give that space between the lines, aren't they? So the threat of almost away from the ball and off the ball, and that spacing behind, as we've spoke about, that's creating the space in that middle third for them to get on it. And
that pocket is created by them being up high against the defence, Giroud and so on, and then he's able to turn. But if he'd have come further up, he wouldn't have had enough space, and one of the defenders might have engaged him. So really clever positional play as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Fantastic. Some really good stuff coming out. So just to summarise it, really, we're going to kind of, it's a common theme now with these key factors is how we're using the Quadrant tool on 1v1 with the duels on and off the ball, but it's identifying how you're going to build a model as coaches and an order, and how you get that order and how you deliver that within your practice design to your players, within realistic practices on how you want to get it out and what the underpinning detail is of your key factors, and how are your players getting the opportunity to kind of practice it and really work on it. You know, and I think that's really an important part now, is as we move through the A license course, is we've kind of seen the key factors, we're seeing the detail behind it on the clips, in the workshops, but how are you transferring this over to your environment with your players? Anything to finish up, Paul?
Yeah, I think, what we're really trying to do is, can you just keep that mental model, that putting those things into your filing cabinet in there? That's why I've used it. It's hard to remember everything, and that's why those sort of headings can help you. Right, what's going in that one there? Scanning. He's looking at the player's head, and that means he can run blind side. That's deception in there. You know, Mane, he's on the blind side, he goes forward, but then comes back against the flow. So that's movement. I'm putting that in the movement sort of file in my head, that might well be there. We're looking at communication in general. Well, what's the timing of that communication? If you do it too soon, you're alerting the defender. See, Mount didn't start running there until bang, the last second when the ball comes through to Pulisic. So now that's the timing. So make sure the players don't run too quick. You know, they're seeing it. They've got the idea of the picture, and then bang, they go late to be deceptive. So all these things are building up, and then you're using it as your checklist to observe your players. And then from that, you're saying, well, my forward runs too soon. And then you're thinking, he doesn't run behind enough. Okay, now I'll design my practice to make sure there's enough space. And now what's my key thing here? All the players, they must have the intention at the start that we're looking for that furthest pass. Might not be on all the time, and we'll search. But now if they've got that intention, then definitely that will guide their whole practice, and guide you in your session design and what you're looking for. So that's where we'll be going next, probably on the course. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Fantastic detail, and thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we'll see you on the courses soon.
Cheers, Ben.